the Minnesota State Fair, the great Minnesota get-together. This is Andrew Parker, and you are listening to the Victory Hour every Sunday from 4 to 5 on 1280 AM The Patriot, or podcast. Every Sunday we create a new podcast, load it up. You can go to your Apple phone, go to your podcast app, and pull up the Victory Hour. We've been talking about the critical election coming up in November and how it is going to change the landscape of governance here in the state of Minnesota, but also nationally. The House of Representatives lies in the balance, and one of the most critical races here in the state of Minnesota and, frankly, nationally is starting to shape up in the 3rd Congressional District, though I believe we have one of the strongest Republican candidates anywhere in the country running in the 3rd Congressional District, and that is Congressman Erik Paulsen. 10 years in the House, has been a leader on issues important to all of us, including safety and security, jobs. He has helped create this booming economy that I described during the first 2 segments of this show, comparing the 8 years of Barack Obama to just the 1.5 to 2 years of Donald J. Trump, and how that comparison is one-sided in support of the policies of the Republicans and Donald J. Trump, and Erik Paulsen has been a key part of it. In fact, Erik is the chair of the Joint Economic Committee, a committee made up of 10 senators and 10 members of the House. He's the chair of that committee. They study and research matters relating to the United States economy. He advises Congress on how best to spur economic growth and create jobs. And boy, have they done a good job. Erik Paulsen, chair of that committee, as we have a booming economy. I repeat, Target Corporation announcing its best quarter ever this past quarter. And that is the result of a change from the malaise of 8 years to now the policies of the Republicans, one of them being Erik Paulsen, and he joins us now on the Victory Hour. Erik, how are you?
Oh, great, Andy. Good to be on the Victory Hour on a great fair day.
Yeah, it has been a great fair day. Sunny out here at the fair. We are up near Underwood and Murphy at the Minnesota State Fair. Come and join us at 1280 AM The Patriot, live on the air. We have Erik Paulsen. He's got a race against Dean Phillips, who is putting himself out there as a moderate. I've known Dean Phillips for many, many years. He is a liberal Democrat that will vote Democrat. He will vote with the Democrats. If you believe in Democratic economic policy and what occurred during Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017, then that's where you should go with your vote. But if you don't, and you believe in one of the most booming economies in the history of the United States, one of the biggest turnarounds ever, you may not like Donald J. Trump, but this economy is booming. And if you don't want to change that, you got to vote for Erik Paulsen, besides the fact he's been a great congressman for 10 years. Erik, how is the race shaping up? And I want to ask you one specific question,
Sure.
if you can tie it on to the back end of your answer to how the race is shaping up, and that is whether Dean Phillips has disavowed or condemned Keith Ellison and the allegations that have come out regarding Keith Ellison and his domestic violence, if we can call it that.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And look, everything you laid out is exactly true. I mean, you know, for 8 years we were told the country can never do better than 2% economic growth. We were kind of in this malaise. That was the new normal. Record numbers of people working part-time that would prefer to work full-time. And here we really do have a booming economy. And it was regulatory reform, it was tax reform, and now we've created 1.5 million new jobs just since the tax cut legislation passed at the beginning of the year. You mentioned Target and other companies that have now reinvested in their employees, are providing booming opportunities for consumers. But look, we're growing at over 4% last quarter, and wages are going up. Jobless claims are at the lowest in 44 years. And unemployment's way down. And so for the first time in the history of our country, we have more job openings than job seekers. It's a good problem to have, I guess, but it is a challenge. And manufacturers, you know, Andy, are usually our most pessimistic group of business folks. Manufacturers have a tough time, but 8 out of 10 right now are so optimistic. They say they're either going to increase hiring or they're going to increase wages. And as chair of the Joint Economic Committee, all the economists who are working for me are validating this across the board. Low and middle income folks are getting money in their pocket. The economy is doing really well, and people feel good about their neighbors keeping their job, upward mobility. Things are strong, and the race is heating up. Dean Phillips, we had our first debate earlier this week, and Dean was pretty honest and straightforward. Even last year he said, look, this tax cut reform you're pushing through, it's terrible, it's horrible, it would be easy to vote against, and it's just on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of results, and people are definitely better off now than they were 2 years ago. And so I think we'll continue to have some distinctions that define us in the race as we have more debates, hopefully, coming up down the road. And I do, you mentioned Keith Ellison, too, because he's been front and center, obviously, in Minnesota of recent. But it took basically a week and a half, and then Dean Phillips came out and made a statement that the allegations were, in fact, very serious, need to be investigated, and if found true, then he should step aside. But a week and a half of silence is a long time on a serious issue like that.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I'll tell you the statistics that you quote are so important, and I know that particularly in the 3rd Congressional District, and let me just give a few stats to folks out there. Obama carried the 3rd 52-46 when Erik Paulsen was trouncing his opponent. Obama carried, that was in 2008. In 2012, Obama carried the district 50-49. It was much closer when Erik Paulsen again prevailed significantly. This last election, 51-41%, Hillary Clinton beat Donald J. Trump in the 3rd Congressional District. And Erik Paulsen at the same time beat Terry Bonoff, a very strong Democrat candidate, by 13.7%. I am speaking to those voters of the 3rd Congressional District, and I am telling you out there that whether you like Donald J. Trump or you don't like Donald J. Trump, if you want to maintain safety as it relates to immigration, as it relates to crime, as it relates to your kids and your family, we saw what just happened in Iowa. You need to vote for Erik Paulsen. If you want to maintain the path of the economy so that your grown kids can find jobs, youth unemployment is at the lowest in history right now. And that is because of Republican policy. You have to vote for Erik Paulsen. Erik, tell me about the immigration debate. I know it kind of dusted up there at the last debate or the debate you had with Dean. Tell me about the differences there.
Yeah, it dusted up a little bit, and look, I mean, with a booming economy, we need people filling the jobs, right? Immigration and immigrants are a part of that equation. But I also know that we are a nation of laws.
We are pro-immigration.
That's right, and we're a nation of laws, and you got to make sure you know who's coming in the country. When you had that tragedy that unfortunately happened recently with Molly Tibbetts down in Iowa. And there was another woman, by the way, in Shakopee who was stabbed to death by someone who is here illegally. I was reporting in the Star Tribune last week, was deported and then came back and murdered this individual in Shakopee. And so we can't have sanctuary cities. We can't have sanctuary states. We've got to have rule of law. And at the same time, we got to have a working process so that we have workers filling these jobs. I mean, we can do that and fix that, but it can't be an all or none situation.
And Dean Phillips is going to vote with Nancy Pelosi, isn't she? Isn't he on this on immigration policy?
Well, it's very likely, because the bottom line is, I mean, look at the tax bill that we passed. I mean, there were so many Democrats that said, "Oh, sure, we need to lower corporate tax rates. We need to be more competitive." And then when push came to shove, we didn't get one vote. I mean, not one. Now, I've talked to a number of my colleagues that said they were pressured into that vote from Nancy Pelosi, and they regret that vote now based on how well things are going in the economy right now. So, I'm just going to keep looking forward. I'll work with anyone on either side of the aisle just to get the right economic policy, the right immigration policy that's good for our country. And I want to keep things on the track they're going on now, because we're in a real good position, to help young people getting out of college and also protect and help baby boomers and those who are seniors that rely on important government programs. We shouldn't be expanding this for Medicare for all that puts those seniors at risk, for instance. That would be a big mistake, and I know Nancy Pelosi is going to push in that direction also.
Yeah, and, we're not talking about supporting Donald J. Trump, loving Donald J. Trump. That isn't the issue. The issue is whether the policies are working. And compared to the previous 8 years, you can't put a single person up here who could come anywhere near in a debate on the issue of economics from the past 8 years to what we have seen now in the last year and a half to 2 years under Republican reform. Republican rollback of regulations, change in tax policy, as you've described. I mean, consumer confidence, 17-year high.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's greatly due to the work of Congressman Erik Paulsen and other Republicans. The 3rd Congressional District and those voting in the 3rd are going to have a huge impact on the gubernatorial race and obviously on the Paulsen-Dean Phillips race. Erik, quickly, what about health care and Obamacare? What are we going to do in the House on that?
Well, a couple of things we have to do. Obviously, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, has been continuing to increase costs. It helped gain access for some folks, but it hurt more people than it helped. And the House went through a reform process. We came up a vote short in the Senate when that was moved forward. So I'll keep working with anyone that wants to make sure we're injecting competition into healthcare, that we're looking at basing our healthcare reimbursement system on value, not just on the number of procedures. And I'm actually authoring legislation that will do that. That's what's going to help provide and lower premiums for people. That's really, really, really important. And there's some bipartisan work we're doing there, but we can't get caught up in saying, hey, we got to only keep the Affordable Care Act. It can't be changed. It can't be repealed. It can't be modified, because that's been a disaster for Minnesota's healthcare system and a lot of small business and families and individuals that are paying through the nose in their deductibles going up so high they don't even have insurance.
Huge cost increases that need to be remedied, and Erik Paulsen will move toward that remedy. Dean Phillips simply won't, although I'm going to give him a chance in a few weeks when I hold his feet to the fire and he comes on the Victory Hour to answer some of these questions. Erik, thank you so much for coming on the Victory Hour. I know you're at an event and had to break away, but I appreciate you wanting to be on the show today and share with our listeners the importance of maintaining the course as it relates to economic policy, safety and security, immigration, health care, etc., as the comparison between 09 to 17 is stark with the last 2 years since the Republican policies have been in place. Thanks, Erik, for all you do.
Hey, thank you. We're better off now than we were 2 years ago, and we got to keep it up. And the Victory Hour is a big part of getting that message out.
Thank you, Erik, very much. And stay with us on the Victory Hour, because we're going to be giving T-shirts away here at the fair. We've got them lined up like cordwood, wanting to talk to Andrew Parker on the Victory Hour. And we're going to talk a little more politics and maybe even mention Israel and the law. By the way, no better congressman in the U.S. Congress than Erik Paulsen in support of the state of Israel, morality, honesty, the focus of protecting those who need to be protected, and that is Erik Paulsen. So make sure if you're in the third